Hey everybody, welcome to the PetaPixel Carcast.
Second ever.
I know, the last one went so well that we've upped it. You can see a little bit here. We have real microphones on magic arms. Morale is high. We just spent all day at Apple. We published a same-day video. So after all that, what would you possibly want to do more than record an hour-long podcast? But we got a long drive, so we're doing it anyway, right, guys?
Yes.
Yay!
And I want to apologize. I'm in the middle of a Honda Civic on the hump, and I've got to lean forward here, legs spread.
It's a very thrusty position.
Yeah, thrusting out like I'm getting some sort of service. And my magic arm is not so magic. It's losing its erection, so I apologize. I'm going to try to prop it up with my fingers.
I generally, I like to make our show really easy for people to both listen to and watch.
Right.
But I mean, if possible, this might be a fun one to actually watch visually. Right?
Yes.
Changing lighting conditions, it'll be very dynamic. So guys, the last time we did this, there were a lot of concerned comments. Just like, how can you podcast and drive? That's so dangerous.
Wait,
That's
were there?
so stupid.
People said that?
Oh yeah, big time.
Oh, I missed those. Whoops.
So
we do read all the comments. So I want to know, guys, more so than recording this podcast on our drive through California today, what is the most dangerous thing you've ever done?
Like in a car.
Oh,
I think it should be in a car.
I think period.
I can go because I'm very strongly against anyone doing this as much fun as it looks, and I would never do it again. But I spent an extreme amount of time in small helicopters.
Right.
And those are so freaking dangerous. I would never do it again. I would never get back in another helicopter. We did a Sony trip once to Las Vegas, and they flew us over.
The A7 III, yeah.
Yeah. Those were Bells, and those are larger with doors with real seatbelts and
the
stuff.
Safest, right?
Yeah, those are safer. I don't know. I would hesitate to get even into those now. I was in Robinsons, which are small, and you could actually feel the propeller, the way that the thrusts the blade. You could feel every bump, and the doors are off, and I'm leaning out, and I don't know. I don't think I could ever do that again.
That's see, when I was a kid, it's a lot of motor vehicle, I think, because they are truly killers.
Right.
When I was a kid, we thought it would be a great idea. You know those GT cruisers, like the plastic, three-legged sleds that you use on a
Yeah.
Canadian toboggan.
They give you a false sense of control because you have brakes that don't work and a steering wheel that doesn't work. Those things. So we thought it would be a great idea to strap it to the back of a quad bike and just not winter, just over grassy land and see how far we got. And I was, a smart kid, so I put on a helmet. And I've never done, you never see this, I cracked a helmet in half. So,
wow.
If I had not been...
On a GT snow racer.
On a GT snow racer behind one. What do you got, Chris?
Oh, I've done a lot of dangerous stuff, though. I don't know if I should even talk about it on the podcast.
Well, if it's recently...
is it incriminating?
Well, when I was a kid, I did some really dangerous stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, what... I did lay under a train once. My friends and I
Excuse me?
Yeah, a train, not. Okay, yeah, it's not gonna be less dangerous. Don't do this. It was horrible.
Obviously not across the tracks, but under in between.
Not in between the tracks to the side of the tracks, but under the train itself. It was very dangerous. What else did I do? I may or may not have street raced a bit when I was a kid. I did a lot of raves. Those aren't dangerous. That's just pure love. Unprotected sex. I don't know. Where do I... Anyways.
Should we start the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's start the show. Just move on.
Now you get to listen to us for an hour.
No.
Just move on. Sorry, guys. Quick pit stop here from the PetaPixel Podcast to thank today's podcast sponsor, OM System. We really appreciate their support. And right now, you can get $300 off some of their select telephoto lenses, as well as free filters and accessories. For a limited time, with your purchase of the Emswico Digital ED 100 to 400 f5 to 6.3 IS, or the 40 to 150 f2.8 Pro, or even the 300mm f4 Pro, you'll receive a free protection filter to shield your lenses from scratches. I could absolutely use that myself. This filter features zero coating on both sides of the glass and a satin glare reducing black alumite aluminium frame that helps minimize flares and ghosts with its anti-reflection properties. Plus, you'll enjoy an additional $300 rebate on the OM1 Mark II body or a $100 rebate on the OM5 body, and many more rebates and free accessory offers are going to go through to September 29th. So don't waste any time. Get on this now. Visit explore.omsystem.com/petapixel or stop by your favorite authorized OM System retailer today and take advantage of these deals right now. Okay, so I'll be our announcer back here because we've got Jaron driving. Of course, let's keep focus on Jaron driving. And Jordan's monitoring audio, making sure the show
my eye on the
doesn't
needle,
go
baby.
off the rails. Jordan's making sure the car doesn't go off the rails, and Jordan's making sure the show doesn't go off the rails. So we've got some interesting news stories today. Certainly, we're going to talk about some very cool products that we've just recently announced or reviewed. We're also going to talk about the iPhone 16 Pro launch. I mean, we did see all the iPhone products, but as creatives, we love the Pro series, and there's some interesting stuff this year. I think you're going to want to hear
There's
that.
a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Before we get to the news thing, I want to point out that I have regularly harangued Chris about not liking any Japanese food except for like sushi and a couple other things that he actually does
This
like.
has been on mic previously.
Yeah,
You've
we
heard this.
talked about this. The reason I'm bringing this up is in front of us, Chris.
I was just going to say there's a license plate that says taiyaki.
Taiyaki. Do you like taiyaki?
Sure.
No, you don't.
I don't know. I just don't want to be abused anymore. Taiyaki's my favorite food. I love it. I eat it all the time.
knew it.
It's
He
my
doesn't
preferred.
Doesn't like that either.
Okay. Anyway,
For context, Jaron has been quite hard on Chris this trip.
dude, I'm about at my limit.
It's not true.
It is okay. I'm about at my limit. Anyway, so we got some really interesting stories. Let's get right into it here, folks. So, Nikon story. This is a big one. This is a very big one. The Nikon Z9, guys. In 1 year,
Big camera, big
Nikon
story.
Z9 cameras have sold more than any other flagship camera of the past 15 years, including a lot of Nikon models. Hey,
No,
why is that?
It's just Nikon.
It's just Nikon.
Yes.
And I want to put this in perspective. They didn't clarify, but I'm sure it means over the same period of 1 year since launch,
Right.
the
Yes.
Z9 sold more than any other flagship of Nikon's over their first year.
But not other brands?
No, it's just Nikon.
Oh, that's not as exciting
How would
as I
Nikon
thought.
know that? Nikon would. This is a report from Nikon directly. The CEO did a letter that was translated into English, and he said a bunch of things, and one of them was he's very happy with the success of Nikon's mirrorless movements in the past couple of years, and that the Z9 was so popular that it outsold every other flagship that Nikon has done in the last 15 years.
See, most of them, I mean, flagships have generally been pretty niche cameras, but I do remember the D3 was an absolute massive camera, and I worked at the camera store when that came out. So that's the only one that I was like, huh?
Right.
But then you think of the other, like the D3S, not a huge upgrade, D4, little specialized, D5, very specialized, D6, 6 were sold. The D6 model number was the quantity that would actually be sold to
For
photographers.
context, I was putting the list together for this story of like all of the cameras, and I got it from Nikon's website.
Yeah.
And Nikon's website said, like, you know, it breaks it down by decade. And I got to 2020, and I assumed that was the last.
Yeah, and then you
of
hit the
them,
D6
and
and
I
you're
had
like,
forgotten about
huh?
it, and I had to be reminded that the D6,
You and everybody else.
was an actual camera.
We never actually reviewed that. That's the only flagship that we're just like, I don't know, man.
So what like flagship camera from Nikon you think sold really well? D3, D2 I remember doing really good.
I
feel like
think
D2,
D3X was a big
D2Xs were
one.
really popular.
The D3X and the D3S were both like specialized and highly loved cameras.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they moved a lot of units.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of units that I don't know if they're going to move or not, Leica has just announced that they are completing the trio for the SL full frame system with a 70 to 200 millimeter
Great idea.
lens.
Love a
Sure.
70 to 2. What a sweet focal length. Do you have any more information there, Chris?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I mean, Leica already make a 14-24 2.8, and they make their 24 to 70 2.8, and I mean, again, they're beautiful lenses, but you know, the underground message though is that maybe Sigma's behind a lot of the design on these lenses. If you take a look at the brand new Leica 70-200 2.8, it's basically very similar weight, exact same grouping of elements, same amount of aperture blades. Like,
You're being awfully nice, Chris.
I am being awfully nice. So I'll let you guys be mean. What's going on?
It's a signal lens.
It's rehoused.
That's been rehoused.
Things have been removed from it.
Stabilization.
There's fewer buttons. I don't think there's any buttons actually on it. I'm not
No,
positive.
they do a very minimalist thing
Yeah.
with all of their zooms.
Slightly heavier.
Yeah, it's heavier.
Yeah.
And it's more expensive.
And more expensive.
Yeah.
So, and we've seen this before. I mean, we knew the Leica 24-70 was the Sigma 24-70, and these are all good choices because they're great lenses. Leica does change the coatings. I believe they do change the coatings. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
Or tweak them or whatever. That's what I've heard. Yes, it's a far more expensive lens what you would get with Sigma. What would you guys do? I mean, do you feel like Leica users are just going to buy Leica lenses? It's
Yeah, I
kind
don't
of
actually know. Any SL users that are listening, if you bought an SL, was it 3 is the most recent one?
Yeah.
If you bought that, would you buy the Leica one just because it looks nicer? Or would you get the Sigma one because it's cheaper in the same lens?
Yeah, like this is really different from when we talk about, say, the Tamron to Nikons, because the Tamron lenses weren't available in that mount. But this is really interesting because we're comparing Z mount here, or L mounts, which is Sigma's primary mount as well.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm trying to think of it like how I would do it if I was owning that camera. Would I really care that it didn't look good? And
Right.
I have to admit, I think I would care.
Yeah.
I think I care
You want the
enough.
aesthetic to match, right?
Yeah, I
With
think
like all your other
I would at least think about it.
L mount lenses.
To give context for those who might not know, I mean the Sigma version, which I would say is optically, up there with the best, is $14.99. The Panasonic lens you can get for $19.98. It's a good lens. It wouldn't be my personal choice for photography. I would choose the Sigma over the Panasonic. And then the Leica lens is going to be down. It's going to be way up to $32.95. And if you want to get a 2x converter for that from Leica, that's another almost $1,000.
Yeah,
So that's more than double.
The teleconverter cost is absurdly high. That seems crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly, you're going to pay a little more with Leica because they're going to sell less of them. But in that case, why even offer the teleconverter? Like, just say, and also Sigma makes a compatible teleconverter.
That is what's weird to me. It's
Yeah.
because, anyone who's buying this stuff should be doing enough research to know, right? That you'd think they would know and it's not like Leica has to hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, Leica shared the optical formula for the 70-200, but they haven't shared the optical formula for the 2x teleconverter. And I don't know if that's just they just didn't bother, or if they're I don't know, trying to avoid
I don't
any
know what
further
the purpose
comparisons.
would be.
But
Yeah.
there you go. But at the same time, if you get a Leica camera, putting a Sigma lens on it, that's going to bug a lot of people. So there you go.
Has anyone ever put a Leica Sigma knockoff on a Panasonic or Sigma body?
I don't know.
If you have, please write in.
That's the new thing. Leica
fascinating.
lenses on a Panasonic body. Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be. Now, speaking of Sigma lenses, and of course, we just reviewed this ourselves, the 28-105 f2.8. So the first thing that struck me about this new Art Series lens that I found interesting, 28-105, even just as a focal range, hasn't been popular for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be like a very popular kit lens.
So you'll have to pardon me because I guess
Young?
maybe not old enough to remember that.
Yeah,
Can you
'cause
give me
you're
a
young.
little bit of history? I'm legitimately, when you were writing that, I was legitimately like, I don't remember this being a focal length at all. So
Oh, yeah.
I had to go back to a website called Imaging Resource to
Oh,
confirm
man.
this. That's how far back I went.
Yeah. Now, to give context, 28-105s were very popular kit lenses.
When?
They were usually like a floating 3.5 to 4.5.
Yeah.
Nikon made them,
Canon made
Tamron
one.
made them,
is
Canon
this like
made
for
them.
film or
For film SLRs,
Yeah,
for
really?
digital
like a lot of 3.5
DSLRs.
to 4.5s, 3.5 to 5.6s.
Yeah. So, and we didn't really see lenses like even 24 to 70s took a while before they were developed, right? There's always 28 to 70s that were popular. But then we saw 24 to 70 2.8s, and then of course we had 24-105 f4s become very popular. Much loved lenses, no matter what brand. 24-120s, 24-105s. They're sharp. They've got good characteristics. They've got nice focal ranges, very versatile. But they're an f4. So this is a relatively new thing. I mean, the closest analog we have for mirrorless, Canon did just release their 24-105 f2.8.
Yeah. And it's
Beautiful lens.
And it's funny, you can tell the people who are just looking at their own mounts, which makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because we saw so many people being like, I wish it was 24-105, and then someone else being like, that's impossible. That lens would be absolutely and it was like, yeah, it's a few months ago we reviewed exactly that focal length. And yeah, it is substantially bigger. It is heavier.
I think I did see a picture. I don't know if it was from you guys or someone else, where someone put those two lenses side by side, the 20-105 and the 24-105 2.8s, one from Sigma, one
Yep.
from Canon.
Yep.
And when they're retracted, well, one of them doesn't change length. So when the Sigma is retracted, it is much smaller.
Yep.
But when it is extended, it's the same length,
Yes.
basically.
It's true. It's
That's
true.
right.
I mean, it is substantially less weight, you are giving up 28 versus 24. And for some people, that's going to be a big deal. I mean, it is significant. What we found with that lens that I really was surprised by, it is quite sharp all throughout its range. At 28 and 105,
very good.
at 2.8, it's very good. And I wasn't expecting that. I figured it would be a 2.8 lens that actually needed to be shot a lot at f4, but that doesn't turn out to be the case. Of course, flare characteristics is really good. The one thing it doesn't do is the bokeh is not that beautiful. Little busy.
It was a little frenetic.
Yeah, a little busy in the background, but I figure 105 2.8s are going to get used a lot for portraiture, like the 105 2.8 range.
Yeah.
And in that regard, your background's usually clean. But it's an interesting lens. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a blast from the past, but I think it actually has a very good place in the market right now.
Yeah, like I don't know if I'm just looking back on it with rose-colored glasses because that was the last lens I shot where my foot worked.
Right.
But I took it out for a friend's wedding, and they had other photographers. So she was just
Right.
like, if you're there, it'd be great if you could get some shots. Which, by the way, check with the actual photographers to make sure they're cool with that, because that is a potential
Yeah, but you're
headache.
Jordan Drake. You can do whatever the hell you want.
And I did. I
Yeah, there you
really
go.
screwed my foot up.
Yeah, well,
but
whose fault is
I
it?
will say I absolutely lived on that 105 millimeter range.
Yes.
And which really surprised me.
Yeah.
I thought I would be shooting a lot more like wides, 85s, but I was really enjoying having that at 2.8.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself kind of leaning on the long end with a 24 to 70, then this is a really
Yeah.
compelling option. And it's not that much more expensive, which is what really surprised
Low
me.
light,
When we're
concert
comparing
photography.
it to like the Canon lens, this is less than half the price
Absolutely.
to give up 4 millimeters.
All right. Here's something that's very new, and Jordan, this is right up your alley. Canon has released a brand new cinema, or releasing a brand new cinema camera, the C80. It's ugly. But what else do you want to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, the C70 is notoriously one of the uglier cameras, and this is maintaining that same distinctive aesthetic.
Yes.
But it's a massive upgrade. Like, we're moving up to a full-frame sensor. One of the big issues with the C70 was it's a cropped RF mount camera, and Canon just don't make lenses, especially for like a professional video camera like this. So basically everyone used it with Canon's version of a speed booster that let you mount full-frame EF lenses onto this. But all of Canon's best lenses are RF mounts. You're not getting the full field of view. So this really corrects that, makes it a much more usable camera. The other thing that the C70 was kind of defined by was feeling like you put it together out of one of those Japanese toy machines, those gotcha balls.
Oh, like my Gundams.
It felt like everything rattled, everything felt so flimsy. And at first I was like, maybe it just feels that way, but they'll be pretty solid. But I know so many people who have damaged the LCDs on that. And that's the only way to monitor it. There's no viewfinders on these.
No.
So I'm hoping that it's a lot better built. But what I am excited to see is this is now the second camera where we're seeing triple native ISOs.
Yeah, it looks like a brand new 26.7 megapixel sensor.
Yeah, they just
something
brought
I've
this
never
out
seen.
on the C600,
Right.
which is a way more, like a larger, certainly like a more commercial friendly kind of body. But I was really surprised they brought that sensor into something a little more consumer grade this quickly. It's just, it looks a little more embarrassing when you're walking around with it, because this is not a beautiful camera. But you're getting ND filters on this.
They're built in?
Built-in NDs. You've got
All your SDI
3G
linkage.
SDI. You've got time code. So yeah, this is a full-featured cinema camera.
I do want to mention it has both C-Log 2 and C-Log 3.
Yes,
I remember that being important. It also shoots compressed RAW,
yes.
but not full RAW as far as I saw it. And I
Right.
think it's because it's SD cards only.
Right.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I just think it's odd to release. How much is it? Is it $8,000? $6,000? $7,000? Can you look, Chris? Open the link.
I can look.
So,
look.
like, while you're mentioning it, it's not cheap. It's a pretty expensive cinema camera.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
I will
the
get
choice
price for
to go
you.
is for SDs feels
Yeah.
really weird. Like, if you're gonna spend that much on a cinema camera, a full frame cinema camera,
Yeah.
I would expect to need to have CF Express.
Yeah.
And the fact that you do get RAW is nice, but it's the compressed RAW and only the compressed RAW. You don't have the option to go higher than that.
But I'd also be very curious, outside of like even actually on very large scale sets, how many people are preferring the full-size RAW as opposed to the compressed RAW,
They
because
may have done
you're
some
still
research on
getting
that,
you're
yeah.
still getting the white balance flexibility. You know, basically your main thing is like slightly less potential shadow noise in extreme shadows, but it's incredibly like it's shooting a chart.
I just want to say my tailbone is in a lot of pain sitting like this. I want everybody to know that. My bum hurts. I might get motion sickness from reading while being in the back here, but hey, it's all good. $54.99 is suggested retail
Okay,
price.
that's less than I thought.
Yeah, scheduled to arrive in November. So, you know, that is something we might very well take a look at.
Okay, I'm curious. The way I would want it framed was, why would you buy this and not an R5 II or vice versa? I really want to know who is the very specific user that would find this to be a better, more compelling option.
I mean, I'm going to go on a limb and say, Jordan, I mean, you're going to love trying this, but I don't think this suits the kind of shooting that we do.
Well, no, I'm
this
a big
is back to
EVF
commercials.
nerd.
Yeah,
I'm a big old EVF nerd.
This is back to commercial shoots, music videos, gimbal use with big monitors and all that kind of stuff. I don't know about run and gun YouTube shows.
Well, I think the main thing here, I strongly suspect that this is a better low light camera, just because it's got that third gain setting there. Should really help it with that. I'd really love to compare like shooting, downsampling the 8K out of the R5 II compared to this, where you're gonna, remove some of the appearance of noise doing that. But yes, I do think it's for people who want the ND filter on that. They want all the connection types. SDI is way better than HDMI. A lot of people are just like, I'll pay double. I don't care. I don't want the cable falling out while I'm doing an important shoot. I totally get that. But this whole market, I think, is just getting smaller and smaller. And we see it at a thing like today where it's an Apple event. It's a huge, a bunch of people are coming with huge budgets there. And it's almost all mirrorless cameras and a couple like absolute troopers with broadcast.
Lots of Sony, and tons of ENG again. Yeah. With the giant tripods go with it. Yeah. So speaking of full frame video, another camera that shoots full frame video is the DJI Inspire 3 cinema drone, and there's now a brand new focal length for it, a 75 millimeter. Oops! Ow, that hurt really bad. That hurts. f1.8. So just giving a different perspective, a little bit more compressed kind of footage, a little bit tighter shot. I mean, I think I would actually love this on an aerial drone where you want to get just that.
So I remember years and years ago, when I was still working at my production company, my drone pilot, Toby, he put, because it's micro four thirds on there, we put a 45 millimeter on the DJI Inspire 2?
Yeah.
Whatever one you could do that. And we were doing it for the compression. Yeah. It's a really
cool look. So what happens with longer focal lengths, if you're using a wide angle and move the camera, it's like your foreground moves very clearly.
Yeah.
Use a long lens, you're going to get all that movement to the background. It's what gives you the Michael Bay look.
Yeah, where they're looking around. Yeah, and,
and everything's rushing in the background.
You look so damn heroic.
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about drones, but the big thing for me is I really see this as for the Ronin 40.
Oh, yeah.
Because all they have now is, I think it's maxed at 50 millimeter 2.8. So great, you've got a full frame cinema camera that I absolutely adore working with, but you didn't really have an option for longer focal length and shallow depth of field without adapting lenses over. So I think this just makes a ton of sense for that. Yeah. But it's going to be a cool kind of 1-2 package if you're into aerial and you want to experiment with longer focal lengths.
I mean, look, we don't use an Inspire 3 for the fly fishing videos because that's, no. But at the same time, there's lots of situations where having a longer focal length would be very desirable.
It looks so cool.
Yeah, it looks really cool. We did use a DJI Zoom for a while, the Mavic Zoom, and I actually really liked having that longer focal length. Not only for hero shots, but honestly just the fact that you don't want to be so close physically because you've got rods casting and fly line going by, recipe for disaster, but you want to get a tight shot. You don't always want like a small angler way off in the distance. So yeah, I think it's smart.
Yep, pretty cool.
Nice to have. So that does it for our leading up news stories, but the big one, of course, we are driving right now from Cupertino to Salinas, and that's because we were at the keynote launch for Apple iPhone products.
Yeah. And it's important for people to know, too, the structure. We talked about this a little bit when we did the Google phone, but so many of these smartphones follow the same rule where you can talk about essentially the specs and what you've heard on day of.
Yeah.
But there's going to be an embargo for us to go shoot a bunch of cool stuff for the full review. And
Yes.
that's why we're bombing around right now.
But we will be working on that, and you guys can check out we have our launch video day of, where we talk about our first impressions, a lot of the interesting features, and what we'd like to see or look forward to testing further, the stuff that piqued our interest. But we can also touch on it right now.
Yeah, because you had some very short, literal hands-on time. We went into the
Yes.
pit. Last year we made the mistake of not going into the pit, like where they had after the Steve Jobs Theater opens in the back, you go out and they've got some samples out there with a bunch of people from Apple who will walk you through all the features and whatnot.
They have like 60 samples for 800,000 people. It works fine.
It is a madhouse.
Actually, every voter in California has to come to the Apple event and play with it right after announcement in order to remain a registered citizen of California.
It's nuts. But and of course other products too. I mean, Jaron was very excited about the Apple Watch, very excited about
so I have
the
AirPods.
AirPods.
I'll mention it because we don't do this stuff for PetaPixel because
No.
it's not related to photography yet. If there's a feature that is somehow camera related at some point, we'll cover it. But I've been an Apple Watch owner for years. This is my third Apple Watch, and it's a Series 7.
Yes.
And I have I'm used it into the ground. It's time. It's scratched up. The battery's not great. And I just feel like now's the time to get one, especially since I was being hyped up for Series 10 because it was supposed to be a big change because it's the 10th anniversary of it or whatever.
Right.
I have to say it wasn't a big change.
Not from last year.
Not if you
in a
compare
huge
it
way.
to last year.
Yeah.
But if you're coming from Series 7 like me, it's going to feel like a big change.
Right.
So I'm excited about that. Jordan's happy that they have the AirPods, not the Pro, just the AirPods 4 now that have noise cancellation in them.
Yeah, my JVCs that I loved for a long time have just gotten quieter and quieter over the last few months, and I couldn't hear them on the airplane, and it was terrible on the way here. So it's like, all right, fine, I'm upgrading.
I might even look at it. I mean, for anybody that doesn't know, I've sort of grudgingly moved over to a lot of Apple products.
Yes.
I use an iPhone now, using the iPad for a lot of work and stuff. I really like my Jabra 4 Elite AirPods. I love them.
Are they slowly
earbuds?
Earbuds.
Yeah, earbuds. Yeah, see? And I lost one on an airplane, and then I searched all throughout the airplane on my hands and knees, and I found somebody else's black earpod, and I can't. It's gross. So no.
Are you sure it wasn't yours?
I was. It's that thing where you're like, oh yes, and then you pick it up this is not mine. This is somebody else's earwax. Gross. So I was very sad, doubly sad. So
I wonder if that person picked yours up.
Maybe.
Oh, that's entirely possible.
Oh, man. So, so I'm running on one right now. Like a podcast we do at home, I've got one in my ear, and that's why, because the other one is on an airplane traveling somewhere. So, but yes, of course, the iPhone. The 16's interesting. It did just come out, but we are really going to be focusing on the Pro and the Pro Max models. So first thing that strikes me, they're kind of doing what Google did with the Pixels with their small and big phone. It's now just a screen size and battery differential between the Pro and the Pro Max.
I love that.
This is at least the second time that I can recall this happened, where they did separate them, and then the next year they brought them back, so there's feature parity, and then for a couple of years there's feature parity, and then last year they changed it, and now we're back to feature parity.
Yes.
Yeah, they just said there wasn't physically room for their tetra prism design.
But suddenly
for
there
the
is.
5x lens, but now there is. So
So last year the Pro series, the 15 Pro had a 3x telephoto zoom, and the Pro Max had a 5x telephoto zoom. This year they both have the 5x telephoto zoom.
So we lose the 3x. Right?
You lose the 3x, and as camera, I know you're really sad. I like the 5x.
I like the 3.
Sometimes I wish there was a 7x or a 10x. But I will say that camera seems to be the same as last year. I mean, again, we'll test that, but it seems to be the same. But the other cameras have changed. So we've got a new 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, same aperture, but more resolution. And the main camera on paper looks the same aperture, focal length, megapixels, but it turns out that it's reading out twice as fast, and that is a big deal.
Like a lot of the folks who are there's not a huge change here missed that, and also don't understand what could come of it. We don't know either. We're hoping that Apple took advantage of the additional frames that they can grab for a photo and do more in computational that we might not have seen. I'm curious if we'll actually see a change there. But it does unlock the 4K 120 that it was missing, and you get that in ProRes log and like all in HDR as well.
Well, HDR. So that means it's actually reading it out at 240 times a second. Bare minimum. I mean, it could even stack additional frames. We don't know. So that is really cool. That's a nice upgrade that we saw on it. And to me, it's kind of exciting because I was disappointed. We haven't seen a main camera upgrade from Apple in 3 years now. Like, it's been a while since we've seen something there. But if this speed increase just gives it more information to work with, to me, that's the same as an increase in sensor size. Because it can just stack more, create better image quality that way. And it gives me, 4K 120 looks great. I mean, we've seen some high-speed slow motion on other smartphones, but it generally looks like trash.
So we got through... Part of what we get to do, we get to, after the whole presentation, we get to see some other stuff behind the scenes, and like they show us more content. We saw up close more footage captured on iPhone, and I still look at it and am still impressed that it's taken on a smartphone.
Sure.
Because as soon as they added ProRes log, it's like this is a real camera now. Incredibly good camera.
There's one thing that infuriates me though about the 4K 120, and that is when we went to the presentation, I always say FPS, but the presenter said FIPS.
Incorrect.
Yeah, they said FIPS. Two of them
Chris,
said FIPS instead of FPS.
I would have noticed this so quickly.
And what infuriates me most is not that he said that, but that Jordan and Jaron and anybody else I've talked to refused to believe it.
There was a bunch of people just like, I think you had to have a blue badge.
No,
they're all working for major outfits.
I don't think...
just like, I don't know what this man is talking about.
They have not necessarily done the hands-on secondary
There's
meeting.
No FIPS.
And they said FIPS.
No.
And so I'm putting it out there.
Chris is
I'm
gonna
going to be
start.
vindicated.
Also, those conversations were off the...
And I remember hearing, this is serious, I remember hearing the first time they said it, I'm like, FIPS? Like 120 FIPS, that's weird. I remember having that reaction because it is weird. And then they used it again. And I'm not saying I want to use that, but I heard them use it, and I will be vindicated. They said it, and I bet you other people in the industry say it too. You guys are crazy. You're wrong.
They will never. They're not going to go on the record either. So.
I'm dying on this hill. They said FIPS instead of FPS or frames per second, and it makes sense because who wants to say frames per second or FPS all the time, right? They said FIPS. So I'm furious. I'm FIPSing furious right now, and I can't believe you guys aren't standing next to me on this. Anyways,
well, no, because I was in the same room and I did not hear the same thing happen.
But you barely pay attention the best of times. So,
how many other things that you say are said in briefings are you making up?
Making up.
No.
So looping this back to the actual topic.
Okay, fine.
Right.
Yeah.
What I noticed the most is, so earlier this year we had WWDC where they did the whole AI, the Apple Intelligence thing, and it was like a lot of emphasis on it. They spent a ton of time explaining what it would do. So
it's going to be so great. They made a lot of promises. You're going to love it. Yeah.
So going into this event, I'm for sure I told both of you, but I'm for sure told Jordan that I did not think it was possible that Apple would only go into this with just, it does all that AI stuff we talked about. There was just no way that would happen the way that it happened with Samsung and Google. That's what they really did. They didn't really talk about hardware at all. So I was fairly certain we would get hardware changes, and I felt very, as you say, vindicated when they basically did that the whole time. So when we do get this camera, or is this camera, it's a phone. When we do get this phone, and when this phone is available to be purchased, which is going to be in the next couple of weeks, it won't ship with Apple Intelligence. It's being delayed. So they say a lot of the features are coming later, like even the part where, like, how Google calls it Magic Eraser, or Adobe does Content-Aware Fill or Generative Fill. That is coming eventually, but it's not even at launch. So Apple had to show us stuff that was done on device that we could talk about now. And that meant for the Pro, the one that I use, not the Pro Max, we are getting 3 new cameras. So I didn't get the 5X.
That's cool.
And I get a faster primary and a higher resolution wide angle. I'm happy about that. And they also had
the longer tele,
that's what I mentioned. Sorry. And then the other stuff that they did, they spent a lot of time on skin tone, which I kind of liked.
Yeah, they've got these new creative styles for photography, which it's nice. They compartmentalize it. So you've got your standard setting, and then if you go to the left of the standard setting, you get they call them like undertones, and they're really about giving a color change, giving a grade to the image, but still trying to maintain skin tones in a natural way. And then if you go to the right of the standard profile, then you get all your classic stuff like vivid and natural, and you get things like ethereal and luminous and all your black and white modes, like your more artistic, surreal, typical
But the difference
modes.
with these is they're not just the way most, like an Instagram filter does, where it applies just like a big gel
One-off.
over the top,
Yeah.
and that's
Whole
the
thing.
whole picture. This appears to be able to separate
Yeah.
what you don't want colored. Like, you don't want
Yeah.
someone's skin to turn green.
Exactly.
If you choose a green.
Not
And
too much,
It
yeah.
doesn't seem to be, it does it a little bit, but I can't tell if that's because the surrounds are green and
Yeah.
my eyes are making them appear green as a result, or if it actually is slightly tinging them. But it is doing a really good job
Holds a lot of promise.
of
Yeah.
making skin tones look like skin.
And if you don't like it, you can adjust it. You can actually add your own bias to the color.
Yeah, they have like that little like grid.
Yeah, just
Like
like,
a
a
hue
classic, like a classic hue grid. So you can change exposure, you can change saturation kind of things on there. And then you can also change opacity with a slider, so you can tone the effect down or up again. So, and of course that can all be redone. Like if you don't like your effect, if you take the shot that way and you
That's
don't like
what
it,
was really
you can undo
cool.
it.
Yeah. So
And
they're
you can
clearly-
also, you can also do live preview while you're shooting, which is cool.
I think that's what's really interesting is inside that HEIF container, they're including the original file because you can undo this. So
Yes.
it's like a raw file, but it's also something that you can freely share. Where, like we said, hey, if I shoot a JPEG, they're like, well, no, it's a JPEG.
That's
It's all
it's
cooked
set.
in.
Yeah. If it's
So
raw,
that's-
well, you're on your own. Do whatever
that's
you're
pretty.
going to do.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that, everyone. You might have noticed that suddenly the screen got a little grainier and a whole lot brighter. Well, that's because I screwed up before we started this and had a max ISO of 400 on. So,
The joys of car casting. It's getting dark outside.
yeah.
Yeah, we had to leave pretty late, later than we expected to, because we actually finished and uploaded the video
Because we work hard, damn it.
that day.
But not fast enough, clearly.
We wanna... So anyways, I mean, yeah, we've got a lot of interesting features. I think one of the things that really appealed to me as a photographer, and I think a lot of people are excited about, is this new camera control button.
yeah,
right?
okay, that's right.
Yeah, so we've got a separate button now. Previously on the 15, the introduction of the action button was really cool. This new customizable button. You could use it for a lot of things, but a lot of us, myself included, would use it to bring up the camera app quickly, and then you could use it as a shutter. Now there's a dedicated camera control button. It has haptic feedback. It also has a mechanical click. So when you depress it, it feels like a shutter button. And you can do now a functionality where you can double tap it to bring up a menu. You can then slide across the button as an action bar to then scroll through the different options, change things like exposure, creative style, zoom range, focal length, like all of those things that you would do manually, you could do with this one button now. And then you can push all the way to take a photo. You can even push and hold to go straight into video. These all seem like really smart things. I know we didn't get a lot of time to play with it. In theory, it sounds really good, and I'm looking forward to practicing it more. But I would say my initial impression was it's kind of fiddly and hard to learn and get used to. And I know for me, if I was in a situation where I'm desperately trying to get a photo, I do not want to be screwing around with a button that's like not always responsive. So,
Or it doesn't respond how you think it will.
or doesn't respond quickly. Like maybe it works, but it's slower. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're pushing down a little bit too hard because that's
Right.
you're in the moment or something, then yeah, it's not going to bring this little menu up.
So I'm going to reserve judgment on whether I like it or not. I got to play with it more. In theory, it's a really interesting idea, and now it frees up the action button
Right.
to be customized for all sorts of other
So
stuff.
what I like about that, mixed with iOS 18, I think it's 18.
Yeah,
that
the
was,
new one.
I
Yeah, the
always
new one.
second guess myself on these numbers. The two buttons on the home screen, which usually have been unchangeable, it's like flashlight and camera.
Yeah.
Those can also be set to very specific tasks, and they can also be using apps that aren't Apple.
Yeah.
So, like, I know you can set the Halide app to it, for example. So if you want to use that to launch that, and then you use the camera button to launch
camera
the regular
button.
one, then you have the action button for the flashlight, then you got another one is your mail app. You can. The phone has become significantly more customizable
Yeah.
than it used to be, and I know a lot of Android users are like, yeah, that's what we've had forever. Okay, you're right.
Yeah, it's important to recognize,
Yeah,
like,
but
Apple's
it
really
was a
good.
deficiency.
Yeah,
Apple's
sure,
really
yeah.
good at making a thing come out, like designing a technology, and then everybody just assumes like, oh, that's an Apple thing. But the fact is, Android of some sort, some Android phone probably previewed it
Yeah.
many, many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to loop back to what I said earlier, I felt like it was a breath of fresh air to go through this whole presentation, which
Yeah.
wasn't short. The
Right.
the iPhone section was like, I don't know, 40 minutes.
Sure.
and very little time was spent on AI.
Yeah.
They of course mentioned it because they have to. They talked a lot about it at WWDC.
Yeah.
They have to say it is indeed coming at some point. But like they spent a majority of it on actual features that are new to this device, that you can touch these features because they're hardware.
Yeah.
And there are there's some software things in there too that are also not AI based, that I am so happy that we are able to talk about stuff that isn't, I can move a tree or I can start a campfire in front of your feet.
Well, and to be clear, you can't. So I think we should mention that. Like, as far as generative AI goes, like modifying your photos, Apple is basically just going to do an eraser tool at this point.
I love that.
I know, and that's interesting, because like everybody else, Samsung is probably going to do something very similar to Google. Google was pushing really hard the ability to move subjects, like delete them, generatively, like put in a prompt and create things out of thin air, right? Yeah. And that does have a cheese factor, and it does have a ridiculous factor, and it is threatening to people, I know, when it comes to
here's the thing. I get the sense that at Apple...
But is this too little?
Well,
like just an eraser tool? Maybe that's too little?
People can judge for themselves on that, but what I get the sense of from folks at Apple is that they don't love the idea that Google wants you to retain the, quote, memory and not the reality. Like Google's whole pitch was you can change it to be what you thought it was or what you remember it being, even if that's nothing close to reality. And then on the other side, Samsung says there's no such thing as a photo. So like Apple sees that and is like, how about no?
But maybe that's marketing.
I don't know.
Right.
What do you mean? From Apple saying that they don't want to do those things?
Yeah, because this is important, but they're very clear, as are Google and Samsung. Everybody seems to be very clear and very aware of AI being scary, and so they're all making sure to very clearly state.
Well, Google didn't.
Privacy, yes. Privacy,
but the use of AI is very shrouded.
But privacy, right? Like, don't worry, we're not going to be like looking at your data and stuff like that. And who knows? I mean, again, you might believe it or not, but. Of course, Apple's doing a lot of the other stuff too, and this is beyond the scope of photography, but they're doing the whole thing like use AI to analyze your emails, to get the gist of your documents and to relay this to you, to remind you about grocery lists and stuff like that, to rewrite your writing different tone.
Summarize a chain is the greatest invention if that actually works.
If it works,
I'm very curious about that. And I just think people like generative photorealistic AI is the upsetting stuff. Like if you're generating like little stickers and cartoons,
and that's all they're doing.
No one cares, right? Like that's not threatening to anyone. I think they're absolutely just like, what is going to give us the least backlash? Like I do think Apple is more marketing savvy than the other companies.
And as a company, like I just mentioned it, Android has had this for years. Is a quote. Google or Apple is very conservative about when they do something, and they take their time to make sure that they do it the way they want to, and when it launches, it doesn't blow up in their face.
Right.
They've been pretty good at that over the years. They're not 100% successful, of course, but like I think that's probably what's going on here. They want to be conservative.
Well, we did talk about this, where Google, as an example, didn't really change their hardware this year. They really went for more like AI. That's their new push. And that we said, well, it leaves room now for other manufacturers to maybe accelerate their hardware game and get an advantage that way. And again, we have to test all this. We can't really make any statements now, but it looks like Apple's decided to go that route and like really push hardware improvements, better sensors, faster readout, and those are always solid things to do.
Well, here's a missed opportunity from my perspective. With that in mind, by not upgrading that telephoto sensor.
Yes, I was gonna say
that
it was last place when we did our rankings of all the smartphones last year. It would be a huge opportunity for them to really leapfrog everyone. So they're gonna get last place again this year.
It doesn't look like the telephoto's better. Yeah.
One last thing I want to mention.
Please.
There was one AI thing that was related to photo that I did like if it works. And I hate that I have to say that every time. If it works, because AI is hugely unreliable. Being able to search a photo library based on just describing a situation you're trying to find, and not only will it find a photo, it'll go to the section of a video that also has that. So that is supremely useful for me, who is like, I know I took a photo of this, and instead of having to scroll forever to find it, if I can just tell it what I'm looking for and it can deliver it to me, I don't look like an idiot in a conversation where I'm trying to find that one picture of my dog that I really want to share.
It's neat too, because you can bring up a bunch of different images, like, you know, a topic, maybe it's a loved one or something, and an event, it'll bring up all the imagery, and then you can even have it, I mean, potentially, none of this is available right now on launch, but you can then potentially in the future have it do things like make a short little presentation. You know, I mean, this is stuff that we take for granted using third-party apps and stuff like that, but this is now doing it directly in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, Google's doing it already.
Yeah, they are.
Where you can pull up something similar. But what's interesting with this is it's doing it on device as well, so it should be very fast.
Thank you for reminding me, Jordan. So last week, Google pushed an update to Google Photos, which allows you to search with AI to, like, you put in like a search term and it's going to be able to find specifically what you're talking about. So you can like look for a specific photo. So it's doing the same thing that Apple's doing, but I don't think it does it for video because Google Photos doesn't necessarily support that. And also it's on device on the iPhone, which is
so it should be really fast.
Supposedly. That brings up the next question that I had, which I'm not really sure, because and this is the AI stuff, which isn't going to be related to the phone directly, at least in my opinion. But they weren't necessarily easy to understand when they say stuff is on device and it will ping the cloud when needed. They're not great at telling us where that line is drawn.
Yeah.
Like, what can I do on the device only? Like, if I put the phone in airplane mode, will I be able to just do stuff on device? I don't know. They weren't clear.
And it's tough, too, for us doing this review because all this stuff is rolling out later anyway.
Yeah,
correct.
So we'll have to test it once we see the new iOS update.
I have a feeling that they're going to rely quite heavily on the Apple servers, and they're going to try to make it as seamless as possible, so you don't really know. And I mean, Google does a similar thing. But we'll see what that's like. We'll see how it seemed fast. You got a brand new processor on these phones, E18. It seemed quite quick to do things. I guess I should also point out, like, screens. They have now made them larger screens, better battery life too, but those screens aren't really any brighter. We're still 2,000 nits of peak maximum brightness, and that is still very decent, but we have to remember that Google has pushed that quite a bit with their latest phone. They can get 2,500 nits of maximum brightness for HDR work, and then up to 3,000 for viewing purposes in bright light.
Yeah, and that was already the case. Like, Apple already was, with last year's model was below. This is the same peak brightness as last year's model, meaning nothing has changed. Samsung is still not as bright. Apple is brighter than that, and Apple's not as bright as Google. So if all you care about is really bright screens, then the Google is going to be your best bet. And actually, if things maintain, we'll find out. But Google has been the pick. If you only care about pictures, that's the one to go with. As long as, I mean, ignoring all the AI stuff, Google is still making the best, like, camera, and Apple is making the best video camera. And I would have to say, based on what I've seen today, there's no reason to believe that Apple will not be the best video camera on a smartphone again. I don't think so. We'll see.
You know, it was refreshing, though, to see the hardware updates. Sadly, the 5x zoom, that's kind of the only thing that hasn't really gotten improved from what we saw before. But
yeah, it was worst in class before.
Yeah, so it's probably going to be there.
And that it will remain there. Can I talk about video very quickly?
Sure.
We mentioned 4K 120.
Yes.
But we should mention, if you want to record Apple Log, you still can only do it using massive ProRes HQ files.
Oh, yeah, you were hoping for we'd get like a compressed version.
Because I can do it with the Blackmagic app. And like H.265, sometimes you do lose a little quality there, but it also gives you to do like ProRes LT, ProRes 422, just smaller file sizes, but still very comparable quality. We didn't see that, so that means not only do you have to use an external drive if you want to record 4K 60p in log like you did before, but the 4K 120 as well.
Yeah.
So if you want it to have some flexibility there, it's still going to be a bit of a painful workflow. What's interesting is some of the footage that we were seeing there, they're saying, oh, we're adjusting exposure and stuff like this, so I suspect 4K 120 is going to work in log with the like the Blackmagic tool. Like that,
Okay.
I think we will see that support. Also, they brought out their audio support for this. They're doing spatial audio, which makes perfect sense with the Vision Pro. But they also introduced basically like mixes for the audio, and most of these I didn't find too compelling. You could say have it prioritize audio that was captured in front of the phone. We've seen similar things with like Sony cameras and stuff. The one I found really interesting is cinematic, where it's going to move dialogue to the center channel and put every other piece of ambient sound to the surround pixels.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. But this is only going to work with the built-in mic, unfortunately. I'd love it if I could just like record with like a lav or something, but be like, everything that's not this person's voice, I want that moving to the surrounds. That would have been really cool. But yeah, otherwise, like the 4K 120, I'm looking forward to experimenting with, but I would say it's a smaller upgrade for video. Well, last year was just such a massive video update that it was going to be a little underwhelming for people like me.
Lots to review, lots to look at, lots of questions. So
yeah, we'll do our best to answer
We're going to do our best to answer
whenever we get a chance to review it.
Yeah.
So.
And leave comments below, obviously, if you have questions too. We'll do our best to answer
For sure, yeah.
as well,
If you ask us the questions, we'll try and address those in the review. But
so
I know that Chris has been emceeing here, but given the amount of light we've lost, and winter is coming. I don't like that. So Chris is like in full shadow to me. I can't see him.
Oh, it's okay. Here, I'll lean forward into the light. Who at home right now is imagining their parents telling them it's illegal to have lights on at night? You got to turn these off. I will turn this car around right now.
Funny.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we have to because we need the light.
It's not illegal. I want to point that out. What we'll do is we're not going to do tech support this week. What we'll do is we'll do our what have we been up to?
Yeah.
And then the feel good story of the week. So it'll be a shorter podcast this week because we're running out of time in the drive and we're running out of light. So firstly, what have you guys been up to? You can say everything we've done.
We've been editing 4 videos this week. I hope you all enjoy that. I am a broken shell of a man. Go ahead, Chris.
I mean, I guess I'm broken too. It was a lot, but this stuff we could talk about, the new Nikon 50mm lens, the 1.4 is exciting. Hasselblad 20 to 35, brand new lens, expensive, but when you factor in that it covers a wide range of wide angles and you haven't bought those already, then you might not be that expensive.
So last night when we were double checking the episode, Chris was saying like, if you intended to buy 2 primes, if you were going to buy at least 2 primes that were in this zone, it was still more affordable to buy this zoom lens, even though it is exorbitantly expensive.
Yes.
So there's that.
I mean, it's Hasselblad. You're going to pay money anyways. It's crazy. So lots of stuff coming out. It has been a busy week.
We can say, too, it's not embargoed. So that Kodak 8mm video, that is also going to be dropping this weekend.
So please be patient with us as you wade through multiple videos, all pretty much on the same day.
The film camera, that has been a slog to get that finished.
And I think it was a month ago we did a podcast where we were like, well, by this time, Jordan will have finished the Kodak
That's why
review,
I say
so
never again. Never again until the next time.
So pretty.
But you know what? At least Jordan and I, we did get a little bit of a break. Our families could go to Jordan's parents' cabin, and we got like a day to relax before flying out at 4 a.m. this morning to get here. But I caught fish in the lagoon. I took the kids out. They caught fish. I took my wife out. She caught fish. So that was really nice. So a little bit of respite.
And we can say, like, this has been a point of contention that my nephew has caught many fish out of this lagoon. Yeah. And Chris has been fruitless in all of his attempts. Over a decade. My parents have had the lagoon here.
The first time I went.
They have a cabin by a lagoon.
The first time I went to the cabin, I went fishing, and I'm just, like, pulling fish out of it. I'm like, oh, man, like, it's so good. This is amazing. And then it just dried up, and I caught nothing for years. Yeah, so
10 years?
Well, I don't know, but a long time. So I was basically at the point where I'm like, there's no fish in this lagoon anymore.
You caught them all.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, caught them on this trip, so I believe that they do exist again in that water. It was fun.
Jaron, any things going on that don't involve fish in any capacity?
Oh
man, I ate some salmon. That involves fish. That was good salmon. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I took them to Original Joe's, which is not the same.
It's not Canadian
Original.
Original.
It's the same as in Canada. No.
Yeah, very different. Apparently, I didn't know that there was an Original Joe's in Canada. I don't know a lot about Canada.
Yeah, I know you're ignorant.
The Original Joe's in the Bay Area is, they do a brunch on weekends, so they open at 10, but it's basically breakfast.
Oh.
And it's delicious, highly recommended. I took them there, they liked it.
Nice.
And then we are going to be back in the regular podcasting space next week, so not a lot else to talk about there.
Yeah. But I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, the Carcast, second ever. I just saw Fields of Lettuce, which means that we're in Salinas.
Yes. Hit us with the feel good story of the week. I don't know if you looked at it. I want you to click that link.
Oh, so see, I haven't looked at it. So when I look at it, it's going to be like
read
fresh.
The title. Yeah.
I'm going to be like, oh man, this is so good.
We want to leave you with something like nice.
Yeah.
As opposed to just saying we're just going to
do it here. So very cool. Nikon unveils new vending machine miniature cameras in Japan.
Oh, this rules.
What can't they miniaturize and put in a vending machine? But yes, of course, Bandai Namco.
Yeah,
Very
of course.
of course.
Yes.
They're going to bring miniature Nikon camera figurines to Japanese gashapon. And that's interesting that it's Nikon because they are the most beautiful vintage cameras
I think
of
there's
all time.
4. It's not that many, so it shouldn't take that many pulls to get the whole collection. And
They're doing 2 old schools, the F with the 55mm 1.2 close to your heart, the SP, gorgeous Nikon rangefinder, but also modern. They're going with the ZFC. I mean, that's kind of skirting the line, and the Nikon Z9, which happens to be the best-selling flagship camera in 15 years of Nikon's history. Did you guys know that?
I did.
No,
know that.
what? Who told you?
So the other cool thing about these is they're not just little toys, like they're just like solid statues. They
like,
come apart. You can take
the lens off.
It's really neat. I want to go to one of those capsule stores as soon as possible and try and get all of them.
Yeah.
These are fantastic.
So I'm figuring out the trip because I want to go see they've got a new Nikon headquarters.
Yes, they do.
They're going to have a new Nikon museum in there.
Yes.
Then we can go to the Gotcha. Like there's giant stores with just endless.
Yes, this is
we
literally
could
one
go there.
video just doing this.
I'll just do Nikon history, Japan, Bonanza. It'll be the time of my life.
If you guys say you'll watch that video, I can convince Nikon to help us make that happen.
Yes.
So if you want to see these guys do those things that Jordan just said, make yourselves known.
I think it's also fun to just point out, this has been out for a little while now, and people are buying them like crazy, very popular. Nikon ZFC and the F camera are like the most popular common pulls. Everybody's really happy with those. The Nikon SP is the rarest pull, which makes sense because it's a very exclusive camera. And I guess nobody wants the Nikon Z9, even though it was the best-selling flagship camera of Nikon in the last 15 years.
I want all 4.
I know you do. And
You have
so
to finish the collection.
please, for whoever gets us to Japan next, bring
For the
Jaron,
love of God.
because otherwise we're going to have to go do this, like,
Yes.
Yeah.
find time to travel to a gashapon when we're trying to work, like last time.
I will transfer $100 to Chris and be like, you must get these. Your budget is $100.
Yeah.
Keep pulling.
Okay.
You buy the
So
whole
we
machine.
got all 4.
That's probably going to get us like 25 pulls, so we'll see what happens. But anyways, more fields of lettuce, so that means our time here is done. So thanks so much for joining us. Leave your comments below. We always appreciate being on the podcast. Jaron, Jordan, you want to say goodbye?
Bye.
I think this was a great podcast with no technical issues.
Yeah.
0.
My bum really hurts.